Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're standing in a chapel that smells like furniture polish and raincoats, where the fluorescent lights hum a little and a single paper program curls at the edges as if trying to fold itself into a boat. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here, and in the comments. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. I like seeing our little constellation of night owls. Now, turn off the lights, maybe let a fan hum in the background, and let's begin tonight's journey together. The organist was a recording, and even the recording sounded tired. I sat in the front pew because someone should, and because my husband, let's call him Rowan, a name that feels like a tree that holds birds, belonged at the front of something. The program said, "A quiet celebration of life," which is a polite way of admitting the room is mostly chairs. The funeral home director, Mr. Aldridge, moved like a librarian who learned to iron. He asked if I needed extra tissues. I said yes, then folded them into a square I didn't use. When the final hymn finished, the speakers gave a small click, like a door deciding to be private. Afterward, I drove home with the windows cracked so the starch smell could exit with dignity. The house still wore Rowan's habits, coffee mug on the hook he liked, jacket over the chair as if someone had sketched him in pencil and stopped before the face. I made tea because grief likes something warm to hold that isn't itself. The cup steamed. The kitchen clock counted without asking me for approval. Academic phrase of the day: disenfranchised grief. The public argument that some losses go unrecognized by community or ritual, leaving mourners without the usual scaffolding of casseroles in crowded pews. I didn't want casseroles, but I would have liked a pair of earnest, badly tuned voices singing with me. Elder wisdom: when ritual fails you, build structure out of small, honest tasks. Boil water, air the room, write 3 sentences of what is true, and stop before you explain. The first true sentence I wrote was this: I miss the sound he made unscrewing a jar, like a quiet victory. The second: the house is louder now because I can hear the fridge thinking. The third: my son will call when he wants to turn objects into plans. I love my son, even if our phone calls sometimes sound like 2 trains waving from different tracks. His name is Cole. He likes efficiency and clean lines and the kind of kindness that comes with bullet points. By late afternoon, thunderclouds built themselves like bad decisions. I went to the hall closet to look for the good umbrella and found, behind a stack of linens, a shoebox with tape that had opinions. The tape had yellowed to the color of legal paper. On top, in Rowan's square printing, for later. I sat on the floor because some discoveries prefer knees. Inside the box, a neatly folded flag patch, 4 medals I didn't recognize, a letter in a plastic sleeve, and a small brass key bundled in twine. Light joke number 1. I told the key it had the posture of a secret and the patience of a paperweight. It did not object, which is exactly how secrets behave. The medals were stamped with abbreviations that made my mouth feel clumsy. Rowan talked about his service the way he talked about the weather, factually, without adjectives. The letter bore a government seal and the sentence: this citation is awarded for actions above and beyond. I stopped there, not out of suspense, but to keep my lungs cooperative. The brass key had a tag with numbers and a word I knew from stories he never quite finished: locker. Sidebar, odd fact: the bugle call taps used at military funerals is only 24 notes long. People think it has lyrics, but those came later. Day is done, gone the sun, tacked on by memory to make shape out of ache. The music, by itself, already knows what to say. I put the letter back in its sleeve and the sleeve on the counter like it could catch breath. The box held another envelope with names I recognized from old Christmas cards. 2 teammates who always signed as if they were writing from an airport. There were photos I hadn't seen. Rowan in desert light, eyes narrowed, a doctor in dusty scrubs standing beside him with an expression that turned gratitude into geometry. The doorbell rang. I smoothed myself into usefulness and opened it to Cole and his wife, Sarah. The kind of beautiful that photographs well in airports. Sarah carried a casserole because she plays by the rules when there's an audience. Cole kissed my cheek with a rhythm that said, "Schedule." "Mom," he said gently, "we should talk about logistics." He meant the house. He meant the car. He meant the accounts that still thought a man named Rowan would be needing toothpaste. We set the casserole on the counter. It had a crust like optimism. Sarah admired the cabinets while I admired the way my hands stayed steady. Cole opened his tablet. "I've made a list," he said, voice soft, eyes precise. "It's a lot, but if we move quickly, we can keep things smooth." "I found a box," I said. Before the list could become a verdict, I showed him the letters, the medals, the key. Sarah's face did the calculation that beauty sometimes forgets to hide. Cole's pen paused. "We should secure those," he said, "and appraise them. Some collectors pay well for historical items." He said, "Historical, the way realtors say charming." "My plan," I replied, sounding more like myself than I expected, "is to understand what they mean before I decide what they're worth." I slipped the key into my cardigan pocket. The weight felt small and decisive, like yes, written in metal. Light joke number 2, I offered them tea, which in this house functions as both beverage and timeout. Sarah accepted because it was graceful. Cole accepted because his list hadn't budgeted for no. We sipped. "A storm made theater at the window," Cole asked, gently. "If I'd thought of selling the house..." "Too big now. Mom, you'd be more comfortable somewhere manageable." The word manageable is a coat that never quite fits. "Let's find out what Rowan left me to manage," I said. "Then we can pick the coat." He nodded, and for a moment the train slowed. Sarah complimented the casserole she had carried in, which is a small art form. They stayed 20 minutes longer than comfort, then left with promises shaped like calendar invites. As the door closed, the house regained its original temperature, quiet, with a hint of thunder's aftertaste. I took the box to the bedroom and slid it under the bed because childhood teaches you that under the bed is where important things learn patience. The key slept in my pocket. I wrote 3 more sentences in my notebook. Call the number on the citations letterhead tomorrow. Ask Aldridge about veteran paperwork he didn't mention. Do not sign anything just because a page looks official. Light joke number 3. I set the casserole in the oven and told it to behave while I made phone calls in the morning. It sat there like a well-paid extra. Before sleep, I stood by the window and watched the rain do its tidy work on the world. Grief likes mess, rain likes edges. Between them, a person can find the right size for their breath. I pressed my fingers to the plastic sleeve one more time, above and beyond, and decided that tomorrow I would begin with the smallest, precise action. Call the number, ask a name, say my own, and let the conversation show me which door the key fits. Morning arrived wrapped in dishwater light and the kind of quiet that lets clocks have opinions. I made coffee, then did the first precise thing. I called the number on the citations letterhead. A recorded voice offered a menu that sounded like a hallway of doors. For awards and decorations, press 2. I pressed 2. A woman with a calm, well-hydrated voice picked up. I gave my name, Rowan's, and the citation code. She repeated the code slowly, like a person measuring twice before cutting once. "I can't discuss details over the phone," she said carefully. "But I can confirm your husband's record requires an in-person verification. There is also an advisory on file about the medal's disposition. Are you local to the Pentagon or a regional support office?" I said I could be local to wherever the truth lived. She scheduled me for Wednesday at the regional office 1 city over. Bring the item and any correspondence, she added, and a copy of the DD 214 if you have it. I didn't. I wrote it down as a quest. Next call, Mr. Aldridge at the funeral home. Ah, Mrs. Rowan, he said, starch rustling in the background. We processed the standard notifications. There may be veteran benefits untapped. Drop by and I'll print forms. He said, forms like other people say flowers. I promised to come by at noon. Elder wisdom. When the day feels too big, schedule it into small chairs. A chair at a desk for forms. A chair by a phone for 3 calls. A chair in a waiting room for 10 quiet breaths you don't have to justify. On the counter. The shoebox waited with its neat gravity. I photographed everything. Medals, letter, the brass key with its tag, laying them on a towel like I was cataloging seashells. Each photo got a file name with today's date and 1 polite verb. Then I put the box in my canvas tote and the key in my pocket where it could listen. Sidebar, odd fact, ribbon colors on military medals aren't decorative afterthoughts. They're coded histories. Blue with white stars whispers valor. Stripes can tell you branch. Theater, era. The medal is the noun, the ribbon is the sentence. Cole texted before 10. We should swing by. Help with documents. Followed by a calendar invite that moved like a chess piece. I replied, noon I'm at the funeral home. 2. Back at the house. 20-minute window, okay? He thumbs upped, which can mean fine or we'll renegotiate live. I chose optimism and a kettle. At Aldridge's. The carpet tried to hush my shoes. He printed the forms, request for military personnel record, information on burial flags and headstones, a guide to survivor benefits. Also, he said, tapping his stack, if your husband had a safe deposit box, the bank will want letters testamentary or a small estate affidavit depending on your state's threshold. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a frequent flyer with paper. He slid me a handout as if it were a hot roll. Bring a folder, he advised, and a pen that refuses drama. I liked him for that. Back home. I sorted pages on the kitchen table. The casserole Sarah brought sat in the oven as proof that food can be both generous and aspirational. At 2:03, the doorbell rang. Cole and Sarah entered with the weather of expensive soap and a man I didn't know, Mr. Crisp, introduced as a collector acquaintance. He had the smile of someone who practices approving of things. We can take the medals to be authenticated, Crisp said, already reaching with fingers trained on glass. Chain of custody is important. I kept my canvas tote close. Agreed, I said, which is why the chain will begin and end with me. I placed the medals on the table in a neat line, the letter beside them, and turned to my son. We are not moving anything off this table today. Academic phrase of the day. Bailment. The public argument that when you hand property to someone for a specific purpose, they must guard it and return it. Possession isn't ownership, and convenience isn't consent today. There would be no bailment to strangers in nice shoes. Crisp's approving smile tried patience instead. I could give you a ballpark, he offered, naming a number as if tossing a coin into a well and listening for splash. Sarah's eyes flicked, quick arithmetic behind them. Cole softened his voice. Mom, the market fluctuates. It's smart to know. He touched the brass keys tag with one careful finger. Locker? It's mine, I said gently, and slid the key not far but decisively closer to my side. And I have an appointment with people who issued this paper, I added, touching the citation. We'll let the nouns speak before the adjectives. Light joke number 1. I told Crisp I charge an entertainment fee for appraisals performed in my kitchen, payable in lasagna. He laughed, paused, and for a second looked like a person who could be decent. Then the smile clicked back into place like a badge. Sarah leaned on the island with magazine grace. We only want to help, she said. The sentence wore good perfume. I handed her the benefit forms. Wonderful, I said. You can help by reading these and highlighting anything that sounds like a deadline." She blinked, then took a pen with the resigned dignity of a bridesmaid holding someone else's bouquet. We agreed, because I made us, that the items would stay here, in my sight, until Wednesday. Cole didn't argue, which either meant he loved me or he had a plan B in his pocket. Likely both. They left at 2:28, not a minute wasted. Crisp shook my hand with a grip calibrated to communicate sincerity. I washed my palm as soon as the door closed, not from offense, but as a little ceremony of reset. Light joke number 2. I told the casserole its job was to keep pretending until dinner. It pretended gamely. I made tea and studied the brass key anew. The tag's digits were stamped old school and beneath. A worn word, locker. No logo, no bank name. I thought of Rowan's habits. The bus depot he loved for its coffee that tasted like tin. The old gym locker rooms that smelled like rubber bands and determination. The bus depot had ripped out lockers years ago. The gym? He kept a membership for decades. More for the steam room's gossip than for weights. I drove to the gym. A low building that looks like a handshake. The desk clerk, Liam, freckles and authority, listened without making the face people make when widows turn up with quests. "We converted to digital locks 5 years back," he said. "Old lockers went to maintenance." He called the back office and a man emerged pushing a cart of lost and found that could have clothed a small city. "Key like that is our vintage issue," he said, bouncing it in his palm. "But we don't keep spares. Number doesn't match current base." On my way out, a bulletin board near the stairs caught me. A faded community bank notice about safe deposit box access for estates. Thumbtacked beside a yoga flyer. Community bank was Rowan's quiet habit. He liked tellers who remembered his garden. I drove there on instinct and muscle memory. The lobby smelled like pens that would die for you. "Did your husband have a box?" the teller asked, pulling up the account with practiced gentleness. "He did." She showed me a screen with dates and a note. R. Rowan renewed box rental last winter. Additional key issued 2009. She could not open it for me, not without the right papers, but she printed the requirements: death certificate, ID, letters testamentary, or small estate affidavit. "Do you have keys?" she asked. I placed the brass key on the counter. She shook her head. "Our keys are longer, with the bank stamp." But her eyes softened. "Bring the papers and we'll help you inventory contents. Sometimes boxes hold maps. Not treasure. Sometimes the map is the treasure." I left with a folder, a to-do list, and the feeling I get on the first 3 steps of a long staircase. It's work, but it's upward, back home. I copied the bank's requirements to my notebook and taped the list inside the cabinet door, because cabinets have excellent memories and I borrowed theirs. I emailed Mr. Aldridge to request certified copies of the death certificate. I Googled the small estate affidavit process and put "make appointment at probate clerk" on a yellow square that looked willing. Light joke number 3. I labeled the yellow square "Questline Side Mission" to amuse myself, and it did. The kitchen settled into its evening posture. I put the medals back in the box, the letter on top, the key in a small dish where I put my ring at night so the two could keep each other company. I set the casserole on the table, said grace in the old plain way, and ate enough to call it dinner. Before bed, I wrote my 3 sentences. The medal will not leave my hands. Paperwork is not the enemy, it's a bridge. People can love you and still try to move too fast. I closed the notebook and let the fan hum the house into an exhale. Wednesday would come with fluorescent lights and doors that open on hinges I can't see yet. Between now and then, I will keep the key where I can feel it. I will keep the forms marching toward stamps, and I will keep saying my name out loud at counters until the right door says it back. Wednesday began with errands lined up like chairs. Probate clerk first, bank second, regional office third. I dressed in the kind of clothes that make counters treat you like a sentence with punctuation. Tucked the citation into a plastic sleeve and slid the shoebox into my tote so it could ride shotgun with my nerves. At the probate clerk's window, a woman with earrings shaped like commas walked me through the small estate affidavit. We stamped, we initialed. We promised the future we would not be sloppy. I stepped outside, feeling taller by the thickness of one manila folder. Sunlight wrote neat margins down Main Street. I decided to swing by the bank before the regional appointment, just to feel the elevator breathe and to ask one more question about the box requirements. Back home for 10 minutes, enough to gather ID. The marriage certificate. 2 utilities with my name steady. My fingers reached the tote and felt only towel. The box sat where I'd left it on the table. Lid closed, tape as I had recreased it. But when I lifted the top, the polite museum of medals had a blank space. The largest, the one that looked like it could hold a storm, was gone. I counted again. The way you count when you already know the number 1, 2, 3, where the 4th should be. Air. The letter remained. The smaller ribbons blinked up. Innocent. I checked the floor, the chair, the pocket I was sure I hadn't used. The cabinet where important things practice patience held nothing but patient cleaning supplies. The front door's lock stared back as if it had watched a silent movie. Elder wisdom, when something goes missing. Do not let your dignity be the next thing to vanish. Breathe, document, and speak slowly to the part of yourself that wants to kick a door. I photographed the box as it was, then the emptiness where the metal lived, then the door, the lock, the window latches, my watch with the time. I wrote a single true sentence on a sticky note. At 9:42, one metal was absent. Then I lifted the phone. First to Cole. "Did you come by?" I asked. No accusation. Just the kind of inquiry chair use. He sounded genuinely startled. "No, I'm at work. Why?" I told him the smallest version. "I'll call Sarah," he said, voice trying to do 3 things at once. "I'll call you back." I placed the phone on the table where it could see me not pacing. Then the regional office. The calm woman from Monday answered like she had held a spot for me in her day. I explained, measured, factual. Photographs in an email before my words finished crossing the bridge of my throat. "Miss Rowan," she said, tone shifting imperceptibly from receptionist to instrument. "I'm routing this to our awards and investigations liaison. Stay on the line." A new voice. Baritone smoothed by training. "This is Major Ellison. Tell me exactly what's missing." I read the line from the citation and the shape of the metal. He asked for the serial numbers on the back. I told him I didn't know. I'd photographed the faces only. "All right," he said, not unkind. "We have ways to match. Do not pursue the item alone. If someone offers to return it for cash, decline. If you receive a bill of sale, keep it untouched." He paused. "And Miss Rowan, you did right to call." Academic phrase of the day, custodia legis, the public argument that when an item is the subject of legal scrutiny or claim, it effectively sits under the custody of the law, even when it physically lives on a kitchen table. Translation: some things, once noticed by the system, are no longer casual, they are escorted. He asked who had seen the medal. I gave him names. The funeral director by implication. My son, my daughter-in-law. Mr. Crisp, the collector acquaintance with a smile that knew glass. "We're familiar with Mr. Crisp," the major said, like a person who recognizes a melody and cannot quite place the composer. "Forward any correspondence. Today you will also file a local report for chain of custody. I'll have a field agent meet you at the regional office to take a brief. Light joke number 1. Do I need to bake cookies? I asked, nerves needing a ladder. It never hurts, he said, and I liked him for letting humor sit in the room without scolding it. I drove to the precinct first, handed over my photographs, my sticky note, my sentences. The officer took them without adding italics. Incident number printed. I walked back into air that acted like itself. Cole texted, Sarah hasn't been there. I'm coming by after your appointments. I replied, meet me at the annex at 4 instead. We will speak with a table between us. At the bank. The vault door's slow dignity did what Valium never could. The manager reviewed my new file with care, the color of navy suits. Once we have letters testamentary, she said, we can inventory the box. I nodded. Something left my house without permission, I said plainly. Her face adjusted by a single note, more minor key, less bank brochure. We'll keep logs sharp, she promised. And Miss Rowan, people underestimate paper. Paper remembers more cleanly than memory. You are doing the right order of things. The regional office smelled like paper and carpet agreeing to coexist. Major Ellison found me in the waiting area. He wore a suit that didn't apologize and a lapel pin that kept its history to itself. In a small room with a table and 2 chairs that had seen things. He took my statement while a recorder blinked. I slid over the letter. He read the citation. And something in his posture softened. Not pity, respect in a quieter octave. Your husband's action triggered a medical evacuation corridor, he said, choosing each word as if they had weight. And saved a surgical team. Some awards have markets. This one has meaning reinforced by statute. Possessing it isn't illegal. Trafficking it might be, given the advisories attached. Sidebar. Odd fact. Certain high-level U.S. military decorations are federally protected from sale or barter under very specific conditions. And stolen government property statutes have surprisingly long arms. Meanwhile, in other corners of history, famous medals have been auctioned without a blink. Laws are a patchwork quilt. The stitching matters. He had me sign a consent to coordinate with local law enforcement. He asked for Crisp's card. I didn't have one. But I had a name and a face and a handshake my palm still remembered washing off. We'll handle contact, he said. If anyone calls you with urgency, repeat this sentence. All communications must go through the investigating office. Then hang up and tell me. We finished with logistics. I'd email scans of the death certificate when the copies arrived. Proceed with probate to open the bank box. Bring the remaining items Friday for verification under their chain. Do not tell anyone your appointment time, he added. Not dramatic, just practical. Surprises make bad choreography. As I stood to leave, he asked if I wanted to know more about the picture of Rowan with the doctor in dusty scrubs. I did. Yes. But my lungs said, later. And he read them kindly. One story at a time? He agreed. Let's retrieve what you can hold in your hands first. Light joke number 2. I told him my pen refuses to sign anything until it has met a notary and a cookie. He said the office vending machine could supply one of those and winked in the general direction of the notarization desk. Outside. The day had moved 3 inches toward evening. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. I let it go quiet, then listened to the voicemail. A voice I didn't recognize offering to make this right for a fee, followed by a number and the sort of instructions cowards recite. I forwarded it to the major and labeled it in my call log. Audition for bad idea, declined. At 4. I met Cole at the annex, neutral ground. Chairs that manufacture civility. I told him the truth without garnish. He rubbed his forehead the way you do when you've misplaced a season. I didn't take it, he said, eyes steady in a way my bones voted to believe. I thought about the money, he confessed. Too fast, then slower, but I didn't take it. His voice negotiated with itself and chose the harder lane. Mom, I'll call Crisp. If he's involved, he didn't finish the sentence, which was wise. Some promises need paper, not breath. Academic phrase of the day, bonus track, because the day had 2 lessons. Willful blindness. The public argument that choosing not to know can count like knowing when responsibility comes to call. I would not accuse my child of it. I would not rescue him from it either. We agreed on the daylight protocol for our own family. All conversations in the annex or at my table. Recorder visible. Copy stamped. No midnight heroics. He nodded. And for once, it didn't feel like theater. Back home, I set the shoebox in a cupboard and taped a note inside the door. Missing metal documented 9:42 a.m. Remaining items observed 6:10 p.m. Chain intact. Cabinets keep secrets. They also keep time. Light joke number 3. I told the casserole it had officially outlived its narrative arc. I retired it to the freezer with military honors and a foil hat. Before sleep, I wrote my 3 sentences. The empty space is evidence, not invitation. Help is welcome, hurry is not. Tomorrow I will hold my own name steady at every counter. I placed the key in its dish. The letter under the potato paperweight that has started to look like a small planet I get to manage. And I let the house breathe its tired, honest breath. Somewhere in a room with fluorescent lights. A file now had our names under it. That felt less like losing control and more like setting down a weight where a stronger table belonged. By morning, the emptiness in the shoebox had turned from a hole into a handle. I could pick the day up by it. I started with the kitchen table, because tables are good at reminding you that order is possible. Left column. What vanished? Middle. Who knows? Right. What has paper? Then I did the next precise thing. I opened the drawer where Rowan kept non-urgent mail that had graduated to please. Insurance notices. Pension stubs. The sort of envelopes that try to dress boredom as stability. 2 letters wore recent postmarks and a tone that wasn't like them. The first, from the Defense Finance Office, politely acknowledged a change of address for the survivor account I hadn't yet applied for. The second, from the insurer tied to Rowan's old unit, confirmed receipt of the beneficiary update. I stared at both as if they might blush. I had changed no addresses. I had updated no beneficiaries. Elder wisdom. When a letter claims you've done something you did not, don't argue with air. Argue with a person who can press a stamp. Paper argues best with more paper, not shouting. I photographed the envelopes, the letters, the barcodes. Then I called the Defense Finance Office. After the familiar hallway of menus, a representative named Sue pulled up the record. I see a forwarding request, she said. Voice professional as good shoes. Submitted online last week. Address, not mine. City, near where Cole and Sarah lived. Freeze the account, I said, careful and slow. Flag it for fraud review. I'll file an affidavit today. Ms. Chu gave me a case number and an email for the fraud team, speaking each letter like a bead. I'm also placing a no online changes log, she added. Future updates must be in person with identification. Light joke number 1. I told her I wished identity thieves were required to wear blinking vests. She said they preferred cloaks of invisibility, but she was happy to throw paint where she could. Next, the insurer. A man named Alvarez confirmed a beneficiary change form had arrived by mail, postmarked 2 days after the funeral, with my name replaced by Estate Representative Cole Rowan. He read the form description. The signature lines felt like a forged handshake. Freeze, I said again. Place under review. I'll fax and email notarized statements today. He used the word expedited, the way pilots say on approach, calm and pointed. Academic phrase of the day. Mail fraud. The public argument that using the postal system to execute a scheme to defraud makes the scheme a federal problem. Envelopes are small boats. when you load them with lies. The river they sail belongs to a different court. I called Major Ellison and read the headlines. Address change, beneficiary form, case numbers. He listened without adding thunder. Good, he said. Document, freeze, notarize. We'll loop with their fraud units. If the same hand that touched the metal touched those forms, patterns help. He paused. Have you checked your credit reports? I had not. Do that today, he said. We don't chase ghosts, but we do lock the doors. I pulled my free yearly reports and found 2 inquiries I didn't request and an application for a store card that sells appliances too glossy for our modest kitchen. I placed fraud alerts and printed the confirmations like tiny shields. By noon, I'd turned the table into a bureaucrat's picnic, affidavits ready for the clerk to notarize, copies labeled with dates and verbs, a stack of certified mail green cards waiting like obedient frogs. Miss Lark greeted me with her amphibian serenity. We notarized my statements, stamped copies for DFAS and the insurer, and added a cover letter to the sheriff referencing my incident number and the new mail pieces. Paper with friends, she said, aligning each page. On my way out, my phone vibrated with an email from Major Ellison. We conducted a visit to a collectibles shop connected to Mr. Crisp. Owner agreed to hold items in back pending verification. He denies receiving the metal in question, but produced purchase logs for other military pieces sold by an individual matching Mr. Crisp's vehicle. We've secured copies. The words worked like a slow release of pressure from behind my ribs. Not a victory, a valve turning. Sidebar. Odd fact. Some modern printers hide tracking dots, a faint yellow constellation that encodes the printer's serial and a timestamp. Investigators sometimes read the sky off a page and know which machine birthed it. Paper leaves footprints, even when it thinks it's floating. I forwarded the DFAS and insurer case numbers to Ellison, then called Cole. We have to talk, I said. He arrived an hour later, alone, eyes already tired from all the things they had tried not to see. I placed the DFAS letter and the insurer confirmation on the table, each with its green frog clipped corner. Did you submit these? I asked, not raising my voice because the table does that for you. He sat. He looked. He picked up the pen, then set it down like it had pricked him. Sarah said, "It would speed things up," he began, sentence thin. We thought, he stopped. Beads of silence threaded the space between us. I signed what she handed me. He said at last, "I didn't read like I should, I'm sorry." He did not say if. He did not say but. Light joke number 2. I slid him the no online changes notice and said, "Welcome to the era of in-person pens." He laughed without mirth. Sometimes humor is a bridge. Sometimes it's just a handrail so you don't fall. Here's what happens next, I said, stacking the day into plainer pieces. You will write a statement repudiating any beneficiary change and any address change you did not personally initiate with me present. You will sign at the clerk's counter. You will deliver copies to the investigator and the sheriff. And you will call Mr. Crisp while I listen on speaker to say no further help is permitted. He nodded, not because the words were pleasant, but because gravity was. We made the call. Crisp performed surprise badly. "I'm merely a consultant," he said smoothly, always eager to assist a bereaved family. I placed the phone closer to the recorder. "All communications must go through the investigating office," I said. Citation voice steady. "Do not contact me or my family again." I read him Major Ellison's number. He hung up with the gentleness of a door closing on a showroom. Cole wrote his statements with the awkward care of a left-handed person using a right-handed desk. We took them to Miss Lark, who notarized them with her green frog diplomacy. "Consequences make better neighbors than secrets," she said, handing him a copy. He looked like a boy who had finally read the instructions on the back of the kite. Back at the house, the phone rang. Sheriff Ortiz. "We've pulled the plate from your trail cam," she said. "It ties to a landscaping company. An employee admits he was doing a favor for a man matching Mr. Crisp's description. A test burn to spook a claim. We're coordinating with the feds. My breath came out on a single syllable that wasn't a word but could have been a prayer. Academic phrase of the day. Bonus. Because justice is untidy. Conspiracy. An agreement between two or more persons to commit an unlawful act. You don't have to like each other. You just have to pick the same night to be wrong. By late afternoon, Major Ellison called with the sound of paper moving efficiently behind him. We have the shop owner cooperating. He will return any items with questionable provenance. Bring your remaining medals Friday. We'll verify and issue a protective receipt. Also, DFS flagged attempted changes originating from an IP address associated with a public Wi-Fi near your son's office. That helps the pattern. He paused, and the next sentence lowered itself into the room like a careful bird. Mrs. Rowan, you are doing exactly what the process hopes you will do. Steady, documented, daylight only. Light joke number 3. Does the process award merit badges? I asked. I've always wanted one shaped like a stapler. He promised to look into it. I made soup, the kind you can stir while reading case numbers aloud, and placed a bowl in front of Cole. He ate like a person who'd been holding his jaw tight all day. I'll fix what I can, he said. Fixing is good, I answered. But first, we stop breaking. He nodded, eyes finally meeting mine without edits. Before bed, I taped 2 new lists inside the cabinet, fraud locks in place, and Friday, chain of custody items to bring, cabinets. As we've learned, keep time like a church bell. I set my ID on the counter, the citation in its sleeve, the 3 remaining medals in the tote with a note. Counted 3 of 3, 8:12 p.m., kitchen table, witness, me. The house exhaled. The empty space in the shoebox still existed, but it no longer dictated the sentences. It underlined them. Tomorrow I would file what needed filing. Answer only the calls that belonged to daylight, and practice a phrase I'd never needed until now. I decline to speculate. Here is my document. Some days, the quiet you earn sounds like the click of a lock that finally fits the key you've carried for years. Thursday arranged itself like envelopes on a counter, one thing after another, each with a window for the right name to show through. I started by printing the call log, the fraud alerts, and yesterday's notarized statements. Then I did the next precise thing. I walked to the post office to file a formal complaint with the folks who consider envelopes sacred. The postal inspector's office lives behind a door that looks like it belongs to a broom closet. Inside, a woman named Patel wore the concentration of someone who can hear a lie in the way a stamp sits crooked. I slid across my copies, the DFAS, change of address, the insurer, beneficiary update, the green cards, the incident number for the porch fire, and a timeline that marched like a good drumline. She read without commentary, which is what you want from a person whose pen can summon subpoenas. We'll open a mail fraud case and coordinate with your federal contact, she said. 2 questions. Do you have a locked mailbox? And has anyone other than you held your mail lately? Locked. Yes. Held. Briefly. During the funeral week. A courtesy hold Sarah arranged online so I wouldn't come home to circulars that confuse grief. Patel's eyebrows noticed the detail. We'll pull logs, IPs, camera footage at the neighborhood cluster box. Forwarding requests leave footprints. Elder wisdom. When you share a chore, mail, bills, passwords, write down the exact edges of that kindness. Favors without fences become shortcuts for trouble. Back home, I photographed my mailbox inside and out, logged the serial number, and returned to the kitchen table. Today's courtroom. The insurer's Special Investigations Unit emailed. Please provide any recent mail hold confirmations, copies of envelopes with yellow forwarding stickers, and the names of any third parties who may have assisted. I replied with Patel CC'd, because daylight is a team sport. Academic phrase of the day. Affidavit of non-receipt. the public argument, sworn, that you didn't receive a thing someone claims you did. It doesn't make the thing unmailed. It puts the burden back where it belongs and lets the paper trail prove its own story. Cole texted, meeting HR about time off to fix what I broke. I wrote back, good. Bring your ID. We're visiting the bank together at 3. After that, you'll read every policy with your mouth, out loud, so your eyes don't skip the verbs. Light joke number 1. I promised him a cookie for each correctly pronounced clause. He replied with a crying laugh emoji that looked like a lawyer on Casual Friday. At noon, Miss Lark called to say the certified death certificates were ready. I picked them up, frog clipped one to the probate packet, and walked to Community Bank with my folder tucked like a hymn book. The vault manager, Miss Chen, greeted us with the calm of someone who knows doors for a living. We can inventory the safe deposit box with these, she said, checking off the documents. We will not remove contents today. We will only list. She tapped the console. The system recorded the date, time, and our names. We signed the entry log. The vault door swung like a slow thought. Inside the viewing room, Box 214 slid out with a metallic sigh. Miss Chen opened her keyway. I opened mine. The lid lifted. Paper. Mostly. An old will superseded by a newer one. Bless Rowan for writing the word superseded right on top. The deed to our house. A small cloth pouch. And a thick envelope sealed with the neat tape my husband favored for everything from bulbs to bandages. On the envelope, to be opened by Mira with whoever sits across the table kindly. I looked at Miss Chen. She smiled. I am professionally kind, she said, but you may want the investigator on speaker. I called Major Ellison, set the phone between us, and unsealed the envelope. Inside, a letter in Rowan's square print. Dates across the top like fence posts. 2 photocopies of medals with serial numbers typed beneath. A list of names, teammates, and a notarized statement recorded 6 years ago declaring intention and custodianship for the medal collection. Not for sale, for stewardship, if questioned. Consult Awards Office, Refron File Naru. The reference matched my citation. Sidebar, odd fact, ballpoint ink can be dated within ranges by solvent composition. Good labs can tell a 1990s pen from a 2010s pen. Rowan's letter smelled faintly of the decade where we still wrote checks at the grocery store. He had prepared in longhand for a problem he never spoke aloud. We inventoried each sheet, each number, each ribbon. Everything matched what I had, plus the missing medals serial. Now a concrete integer you could set a cup on. Chen sealed the list, stamped it, signed the log, and gave me a copy. Paper remembers, she murmured, which has apparently become our town's unofficial motto. Light joke number 2. I told her our next festival should be called Frog and Stamp Days. She said the bank would sponsor the Counters Who Care booth. On the way home, Cole sat quiet, the kind that makes room for oxygen. I didn't know Dad kept all that, he said, voice full of new furniture being arranged in an old room. He kept what mattered where it could help later, I answered. That's the job now. The phone rang before we reached the driveway. Patel. Neighborhood cluster cam shows a woman using a master key to open your panel last Thursday, she said. She wore a carrier vest. We've confirmed she is not USPS. We're coordinating with local PD and the feds. We'll also serve a preservation request on the mailbox store, where a forwarding address received a test postcard. She paused. Voice kind without stepping into pity. You'd be surprised how many schemes die because someone wanted a selfie with a key they shouldn't have. We met Major Ellison at the regional office at 4 with the vault inventory in triplicate. He scanned the serials, nodded once, the nod of a lock recognizing its key, then slid over a protective receipt for the 3 medals remaining in my custody. Carry this anytime you transport them, he said. If anyone pretends authority they don't have. A badge can call this number and meet our office instead. Update on the missing piece? I asked, wrapping my voice in linen. The shop owner has now produced a buy sheet with a photo that matches your missing metal and serial, he said. He says it came from a private seller using a different name. Surveillance shows Mr. Crisp on the sidewalk during the transaction, not at the counter. We're obtaining warrants. He looked at Cole, whose jaw had become a straight line of remorse. Mr. Rowan, ignorance is not insulation. Your cooperation now matters. Academic phrase of the day, bonus, because today learned multiplication. Access device fraud, the public argument that using someone else's identifiers, account numbers, online credentials, to obtain value isn't just rude, it's federal. Couple that with forged beneficiary updates, and you've got a recipe investigators can read with oven mitts on. We left with a plan. Friday morning, I'd bring the 3 metals for official verification under their chain. Afternoon, we'd sign the bank's inventory, file the probate update, and drop Miss Patel's affidavits at the clerk in the parking lot. Cole exhaled like a tire remembering its patch. I called Sarah, he said, steady. I told her I'd sign things I didn't read, and I won't be signing for us again. She said I'm overreacting. I told her a federal agent knows my first name. That quieted the room. Light joke number 3. I told him the new family policy is no e-signatures after 8 p.m. or within 50 feet of a charcuterie board. He smiled like a person who had earned the right to. Evening brought an email from the insurer SIU. The mail change form bore a printer microdot pattern that matched a make and model sold at one copy shop in a 3-mile radius. Preservation letter served, it read. Security footage requested. Another from Ms. Patel. Forwarding request originated on a phone registered to S. Rowan. Will confirm possession and intent. I added the updates to the binder. Tabs multiplying like brave little flags. I made rice and vegetables and called the dish good enough before bed. I wrote my 3 sentences. The vault held a letter that walked across 6 years to help me. Envelopes can carry either groceries or crimes. Today, they carried both toward the right desks. Tomorrow, I will take the medals by daylight, hand them to people whose job is to remember, and keep only what I must. My name on the line where it belongs. The house breathed. The key slept in its dish. The potato paperweight guarded the citation like a small planet with gravity. And somewhere in town. A printer thought about dots it had left behind. Friday would be fluorescent. Yes. But the kind of fluorescent you forgive when it lights a room where the right hands meet the right papers and say, together. We see it. We sign it. We keep it honest. Friday arrived with the practical light of a hallway. Plain. Sufficient. Not in the mood for theater. I put the 3 remaining medals in a zip pouch the awards office had given me, slid the protective receipt into the front sleeve like a stern chaperone, and drove to the regional office with the calm you get from having a list that forgives you for being human. Major Ellison met me at the security desk, his tie the color of decisions. We'll verify, log, and return, he said, ushering me into a room where the air smelled faintly of lint-free gloves. 2 technicians greeted us without small talk, which I found soothing. Their job was to argue with metal using magnification and records, not adjectives. They worked in a rhythm, weigh, photograph, check serial, compare patina, log. A camera whispered its little click. A laptop accepted numbers like pearls. When the 3rd metal matched, the technician printed a new custody receipt and slid it across with the gravity of a passport. These are yours to steward, she said. If you transport them, carry this. I folded the paper carefully and placed it behind my ID. Identity sitting beside responsibility like 2 neighbors who share a fence. Elder wisdom. When the world hands you proof, do not tuck it where it can grow shy. Keep it within reach of your name and use it only as often as necessary. Never as decoration. Major Ellison checked his phone. The search warrant is in motion, he said. keeping his voice at a courthouse volume. "Will update you when it's safe to approach." I had not been invited to any approach and was grateful. My role today was witness, not participant. "Go home," he added, "and do not answer any unknown numbers unless they leave a message you can forward, if the shop calls you. Say this exact sentence: 'Please coordinate with the investigating office,' then hang up. No improvisation." Light joke number 1. "So, a strict no jazz policy," I said, signing the log. "Exactly," he replied. "We're marching band until further notice." Back at the kitchen table, I laid out fresh folders like plates. DFAS, insurer, postal inspection, awards, bank, each title in block letters, the opposite of fancy. I brewed tea and read the same paragraph 3 times until my nerves admitted the words. The phone stayed mostly quiet, which felt like a mercy. At 1:14 p.m., a text from an unknown number winked onto the screen. "We can return your property today. Cash on pickup avoids paperwork." It was followed by a location pinged to the back alley behind the collectibles shop. I exhaled slowly and forwarded the text to Ellison and Patel with one phrase: "As instructed, no response." Then I placed the phone face down, because temptation is less persuasive when it can't make eye contact. At 2:03, the major called. "We've secured the premises," he said. "Owner cooperating. Inventory underway, if you're able. Come to the storefront at 3. Bring your receipt. We'll do identification and transfer under our chain." My bones, which had been pretending to be a chair, stood up as if someone had pressed the right lever. The collectibles shop smelled like cardboard and varnish. The scent of too many stories, stacked without time to listen to them. A bell on the door announced me. 2 agents in windbreakers glanced over, faces arranged in professional plane. The owner, Mr. Dallow, stood behind the counter with the posture of a man who had recently remembered his better self. He looked older than Tuesday. Paper does that. It sets your spine honest. Major Ellison introduced everyone in first names and function, like a gentle roll call. He positioned me at one end of the counter, then nodded to Dallow. The owner placed a padded tray between us. On it, under soft light, lay a metal that felt like it pulled the room a few degrees toward center. My throat didn't lurch. My hands did not reach. I let my eyes do their job. There it was, the storm-colored face, the nick on the lower edge Rowan had once called "the day the truck learned patience." The serial stamped like a tiny, stubborn truth. The technician read the number aloud. The agent read it back. The log accepted it. Ellison looked at me, not unkind. "Identify, please." "That is Rowan's," I said, with the quiet of a kitchen timer. Serial ending in 742, the scratch at 5 o'clock, the ribbon with the faint sun fade near the clasp. My voice surprised me by behaving. Grief kept its elbows off the counter. Academic phrase of the day. Replevin. The public argument that when someone wrongfully holds your property, the law can order its return before a final judgment, restoring possession so the dispute doesn't ruin the season. It's a word that looks ungainly until the clerk stamps it. And then it stands up straight. Dallow cleared his throat. "I didn't know," he said, eyes not quite meeting mine. "I mean, I didn't ask enough, because I liked the price." He slid a folder forward with copies of buy sheets, dates, and a security still, an arm, a sidewalk, a shadow that matched a man I had met for 20 cautious minutes in my own kitchen. "I'll testify," he added quickly, as if the word might earn him back a sliver of morning. Light joke number 2. I told him I accepted testimony but not coupons. "I don't do store credit on integrity," I said softly. His mouth tried a smile and gave up halfway, which seemed proportionate. The transfer happened by choreography. The metal was placed into a labeled pouch, the pouch into a hard case. The case's tag matched the receipt. The receipt got a new line. My name and the date braided themselves together in ink. When the agent handed me the case, I held it at the middle, not like a prize, more like a glass of water you don't want to spill in a house that just learned about earthquakes. Sidebar, odd fact, museums store medals not on velvet, which can shed acids, but on inert foam or mylar cradles, with acid-free tissue for the ribbons. Beauty has rules when it wants to last. Next steps, Ellison said in that steady baritone that had become a kind of metronome for my week. Criminal charges will take their own pace. Mail fraud, access device fraud, conspiracy, possibly possession of stolen government property depending on the U.S. attorney's appetite. Your job is to keep your chain of documents intact and avoid comment outside of written statements. He paused, and to breathe, I signed one more page, and the page signed back with a stamp. On my way out, I passed a glass case filled with enamel pins and old campaign buttons, each priced with a little dangling tag. It felt suddenly like a thrift store for decisions. Some redeemed, some mislaid, all tagged for review. Cole was waiting on the sidewalk, hands visible, shoulders doing the slow lift and lower of a person who is learning new math. He saw the case and didn't reach for it. Good. We'll talk tonight, I said. My table, duplicate chairs, recorder visible. He nodded. I called HR, he said, and told them I need time to testify if needed. They said, bring your paperwork. He actually smiled, a small, surprised thing, like he'd found a language where he'd always assumed the verbs were irregular. Light joke number 3. I told him we were now a bilingual household, English and forms. Conjugate, notarize, file, I said. He answered, Amen, in a tone that made the joke land like a prayer. At home, I set the case on the table, didn't open it, and wrote 3 sentences of proof. Received at 3:47 p.m., regional chain intact. Serial verified, log number appended. Owner, Mira Rowan. Steward, per letter, dated 6 years prior. Then I called Miss Chen at the bank to schedule Monday morning vault inventory addendum, and Miss Lark to ask for a notary slot so my kitchen could stop pretending to be a courthouse. I allowed myself to open the case only after the calls were logged. The metal looked like a thundercloud that had remembered sun. I wrapped the ribbon in acid-free tissue. Major Ellison had tucked a sheet into the pouch with the unshowy kindness of people who know you will need something before you think to ask, and set the case by the potato paperweight that has become essentially a small planet of gravity on my table. Dinner was very friendly with leftovers. I set 2 plates, poured water, and waited for Cole before he arrived. I practiced my opening line so my voice would choose the lane I needed. We're going to name what happened. We're going to set boundaries with verbs. And we're going to choose a future that lets you be Theo's father with your head up. The doorbell rang. I breathed in. A long, careful count that metal and people both respect. Paper stacked neatly beside my plate. Recorder ready, chairs even. The room arranged itself into something that could hold the weight of truth without breaking the table. Tomorrow would bring affidavits and apologies. Perhaps in that order, tonight. We would begin at the kitchen, with daylight still in the corners, and with a metal resting to my left like a weather report. Storm survived. Visibility improving. We sat across from each other like 2 people who'd finally agreed on chairs. The recorder icon glowed between the water glasses. The metal's case rested within eyesight but out of reach, the way you place a candle where it warms the room without setting the curtains on fire. Cole folded his hands. I'm here to say it straight, he began, voice steady the way a bridge is steady when you test a single plank. I signed things I didn't read. I let pressure dress up as help. I'm sorry. He didn't try to refinance the sentence with a but. I nodded. Thank you, I said. Now we lined the apology with actions. We made a small agenda, written in block letters, statements, restitution, cooperation, boundaries. He read the headings aloud, because Saying words with your mouth makes your eyes behave. First, I said, you'll draft a timeline in your handwriting, no adjectives, who gave you what form, where you signed, when you mailed. You'll bring it to Miss Lark tomorrow for notarizing. He nodded and took the pen as if it had temperature. Elder wisdom. When a mistake is bigger than an apology, build a schedule, not a speech. Calendars carry more weight than promises. Second, I continued, you will contact HR again and memorialize in writing that you are available to testify. Third, you will set up an account to deposit any restitution the court might order now, not later. So, money can find the right path, he blinked. Restitution before charges? Preparation is not guilt, I said. It's a chair you offer the future. Academic phrase of the day. Proffer. The public argument that a defendant or witness may offer an honest. Preview account to investigators about what they know and did, often in hope of leniency, not a plea, a map, if asked. He would tell the truth with paper in his lap. We called Major Ellison on speaker. He answered in the metronome voice that had become the room's third hand. I summarized our plan. He approved the timeline and offered a phrase that sounded like a tool. Voluntary statement under counsel, he said. You don't have to be the villain to be useful. Bring your facts to daylight. Cole agreed to meet the AUSA if invited. Ellison added one practical blessing. No more consultants. If anyone says they can make this go away for a fee, reply only with my office number and then tell me. No improvisation. No jazz, I echoed. He almost laughed. We turned to money. Cole scrolled his banking app, then looked at me. If I sell the extra car, he said carefully, I can seed the restitution account now. I didn't clap. I did not rescue him by offering to help. I wrote the sentence on our agenda and underlined it once. The recorder blinked like a small lighthouse. We were not performing. We were placing stones to step on. Light joke number 1. I slid a cookie across the table and told him we award one for every concrete verb. Draft, file, notify. I counted. Eat, he added. Obedient. We set boundaries and wrote them big. He would not access my mail, accounts, or records without me present. I would not speculate about charges outside of what the paper says in ink. We would speak in daylight, at tables, with copies stamped, voices low enough for the house to rest. He took a breath I could hear settle in his ribs. Sidebar, odd fact, paper fibers have a grain, just like wood. If you fold with the grain, the crease is clean, against the grain, it frays. You learn to feel it in your fingertips. People have a grain. 2. Read it right, and some folds don't break. The doorbell rang. A polite interruption that arrived with the exact posture of envelopes. Sheriff Ortiz stood there, night plain uniform, clipboard under her arm. Quick update, she said, stepping in when invited. USPS inspectors have a suspect in custody for unauthorized access at the cluster box. Cooperation is in the air. Also, the favor done at your porch? The landscaper named Crisp as the instigator. He's lawyered up. She glanced at the case on the table. You got it back. Under the right hands, I said. Good, she replied. Right hands save us all time. Cole spoke up. Deputy, I signed forms I shouldn't have. I'm preparing a statement. She regarded him with the precise kindness a seatbelt gives. Bring your paper, she said. We like paper. After she left, we completed the timeline, row by row, dates, locations, who, how, no editorial. He wrote slowly, which is how you learn to spell consequence. When the last period landed, he looked younger and older at once, like a field after hail that still plans a harvest. We took a break to stir soup. Light joke number 2. I assigned him onion duty and told him tears from chopping do not count as remorse. He sliced with penitent precision. After dinner, We called Miss Chen at the bank to arrange Monday's vault addendum and asked whether she could witness a basic no access without me present letter for my accounts. We can note the file, she said. We can also add a branch only, 2 signatures flag for certain transactions. Boundaries you can staple make better sleep. The phone vibrated with a new email, Insurer SIU. Printer identified, it read. Footage shows S. Rowan printing forms, timestamp consistent with postmark, interview scheduled. I read it aloud. Neutral. Cole closed his eyes, then opened them with the dignity of someone who has decided not to be a fog. I will tell the truth, he said. Then we will tell Theo age-appropriate facts. He looked at the recorder, then at me. I'll ask for help doing that. We drafted a simple family script. Grandma will say the porch got too hot and the sprinklers helped. Some grown-ups made poor choices. Grown-ups are fixing them with paper and patience. Love stays. We wrote it on an index card because index cards are patient actors. Ellison texted, AUSA likely to charge crisp and accomplice. Civil recovery discussions possible with shop owner. Keep receipts and chain. Expect contact early next week. The words did their small engineering in my chest. Nothing flashy, just a beam where I needed it. Light joke number 3. I penciled celebrate boring on the corner of our agenda. Cole smirked. What's the party hat look like? A file tab, I said. Maybe a frog clip. We closed the night with 3 signatures. His on the timeline. Mine on a boundary letter for the bank. Ours side by side under a sentence we both needed to say, we will not make decisions after dark. We taped it inside the cabinet door, the cabinet, already heavy with dates. Received the promise like a church takes a hymn, quiet, complete, before he left. Cole looked at the metal case again and kept his hands where they were, which may be the bravest thing he did all day. I miss him, he said softly. And it wasn't an excuse. It was a sentence shaped like a key. Me too, I said. Let's be the kind of people he trusted us to become. He nodded. The front door closed with the sound of wood deciding to be useful. After the house remembered how to breathe, I called Maribel. She listened, only interrupting to add commas to my run-on thoughts. Good, she said at last. Now sleep. Tomorrow you will notarize. You will print. You will resist the temptation to summarize with a feeling when a document will do. From her porch, a cat purred a metronome. I promised to match the beat. I put the recorder in its pouch, the metal case in the cabinet beside the ledger, and my name on a sticky note that read, Saturday, copy, file, walk. I wrote my 3 sentences. Action is apology with shoes. Boundaries are furniture. Choose them sturdy. We cook soup. We do not boil decisions. The fan hummed its lullaby. Outside, the pine adjusted 1 needle at a time. Inside, the paper held. Tomorrow would bring signatures that aren't dramatic. A clerk's stamp that sounds like a tiny door deciding yes. And a morning walk to the bank where Miss Chen's professionalism is a civic resource for tonight. I let the quiet climb into the room and sit with me, as if silence were also a witness willing to swear. We will keep doing the next precise thing until the big thing is true. Saturday morning, the air felt newly washed, like the town had ironed its shirt. I stacked the day into 3 chairs. Notarize, walk, witness. First, the clerk. Cole and I filed his timeline. My boundary letters and the frog green clips did their cheerful jurisdiction. Second, a quiet lap around the block so my chest could rehearse calm. Third, the regional office, only this time the invitation had a title, recognition. We arrived to a room that wasn't quite a ceremony and wasn't merely a desk either. A flag stood in a stand that knew how to hold weight. Major Ellison met us with his steady metronome voice and a tie that looked like it had chosen humility on purpose. Some of Rowan's teammates are here, he said, opening a door where voices turned into presence. A man with desert in his eyes introduced himself as Dr. Nadir, the surgeon from the photo in the box. Beside him, a logistics officer named Hart, and a pilot whose laugh was the kind that doubles as a bandage. They were not in dress uniforms. They wore quiet clothes with careful posture. Dr. Nadir shook my hand like he was counting something important. Pulse, perhaps, or gratitude. "Your husband pulled a convoy where none should have fit," he said, low. "We made it to the airstrip with a dripping world behind us. I owe him a career, a daughter, a stubborn garden that refuses to die." He smiled, and the word garden turned from metaphor back into dirt and seed. Elder wisdom. When a stranger tries to hand you gratitude, let it land. Don't edit it into something smaller to be polite. Honor wants the full chair. We sat. A personnel officer read a summary that kept to nouns and verbs: route, ambush, extraction, helicopter. Improvised runway lights made from diesel and rare luck. She didn't add adjectives, which felt like respect. Cole's shoulders shifted, abandoning the slouch of shame for the posture of listening. I held the protective receipt like a talisman that smelled faintly of paper and printer heat. Academic phrase of the day: official acknowledgement, the public act by which an agency or institution recognizes a deed. Service, or status in the record. It isn't applause, it's an entrance in the ledger where history is kept when memory goes home to make dinner. Dr. Nadir placed a small frame on the table, a photo of Rowan and a team lined up in haste. Ash on one sleeve, relief doing geometry on their faces. "We never mailed this," he said, thumb brushing the edge. "Too many assignments, then too much time. Today seems like the correct address." He handed me a folded letter he'd carried like a passport. Inside, the plainest gratitude I've read. 3 sentences, all muscle. He'd written it years ago and not found the door it belonged to until now. Light joke number 1. I told him I charge a late fee on gratitude, 1 cookie and a promise to water his tomatoes with a count to 60. He laughed properly, the kind that shakes dust out of corners. Major Ellison produced a simple certificate to accompany the medal I had retrieved, an addendum for the file noting custodianship affirmed, trafficking attempt intercepted, provenance reconfirmed. He slid a pen across, no flourish, no trumpet. The pen signed like a tire finally remembering air. Sidebar. Odd fact. The paper used for some official certificates has blue fibers embedded, tiny threads that show under magnification, partly to discourage counterfeiting, partly because paper enjoys secretly being a textile. We paused for a photo because someday memory will ask for proof shaped like rectangles. I held the certificate. Cole stood just behind my shoulder, visible but not crowding. For one breath, grief and pride shook hands and agreed to share the room. After, we moved to a smaller office where a benefits counselor explained 3 practical things I wish funerals came with on a ribbon. Survivor paperwork steps. A number you can call and expect a human shrugging off lunch. And the precise phrase to use when a form tries to bully you. If a clerk says, "That's not our department," you say, "Please note, I'm making a good faith effort to comply and ask for a supervisor." She coached. She slid me a card. "This is the person who actually fixes things." On the way out, Hart, the logistics officer with lists for blood, pulled me aside. "About the shop and the forms," he said. "We saw similar scams overseas in miniature. They always fold when they have to use daylight." He handed Cole a printout, a checklist titled After Action for Families. Bulleted like kindness in boots. Freeze, notarize, confirm, log, breathe. Cole tucked it into his jacket with a care I've seen only in fathers buttoning small coats. We left the building into honest sunshine. Cole stopped at the steps. "I think I know how to apologize to Theo," he said, not with a speech, with showing. His eyes did the work of staying present. "We can plant something that needs water every day and log it. Show him paper is for keeping promises in the open." I nodded. Moon and stars, I said. They're waiting in a packet like polite planets. Light joke number 2. He asked if we needed a court order to dig. Only from the worms, I said. They're sticklers about tenancy. Back at the cabin, I set the certificate in a temporary frame that didn't try too hard and called Maribel. It went the way it should, I told her. Not pomp, proof. She hummed approval, which is her version of applause. Bring cookies to the people who know where to put papers, she advised. Sugar greases the gears that are already designed to turn. Sheriff Ortiz phoned mid-afternoon. U.S. Attorney's Office is drawing up charges for Crisp and the cluster box impersonator, she said. The shop owner is cooperating and drafting restitution. You'll get a victim notification packet, which I apologize for in advance. Its prose could sand wood. I thanked her and promised to read with a pencil and a snack. We used the last good light to turn the ground by the porch. Cole read the seed packet instructions aloud, correctly emphasizing verbs. Theo arrived with a child's solemnity and a little plastic trowel that looks like hope. He pressed each seed with his fingertip as if swearing something small and binding. Count to 60, I told him. He counted, earnest and erring, and when he overshot at 73, we agreed the soil is multilingual. While we watered, Sarah walked up the drive alone, hands visible, eyes searching for the right distance. She stood at the edge of the porch like a person who'd learned where not to stand. I've been asked to come in for an interview, she said simply. I will tell the truth. She looked at Theo, then at the metals case visible through the screen. I forgot what things are for, she added, voice quiet. Paper, keys, trust. I nodded. Purpose is a good fence, I said. It keeps tools from becoming weapons. She accepted the sentence like a ration, not enough to feast on, enough to finish the walk home with. Academic phrase of the day, bonus, because the afternoon carried 2 lessons. Restitution order, the court's instruction that a defendant repay a victim for losses directly caused by the crime, not vengeance. Accounting that behaves. We logged the watering time, the seed depth, the date, because the cabinet door likes to collect promises. Cole wrote, planted with witnesses. Theo drew a circle with freckles, his version of a moon and stars rind, and added a smile. It looked like a weather report improving by degrees. Light joke number 3. The moth resumed its application for town clerk, landing on the certificate frame like a punctuation mark that refuses to pick a side. I told it the job requires daylight hours. It tapped the glass in protest, which I took as a formal appeal. Evening cooled the porch. I placed the metal case and the certificate together where they could keep each other from becoming either shrine or shrug. I wrote a practical list for Monday. Vault addendum. Counselor call. Victim packet. Insurer follow-up. And then a smaller list that felt like oxygen. Bake for Miss Lark. Label the seed row properly. Teach Theo the word provenance. And let him say it wrong until the day he suddenly doesn't. Before bed. I wrote 3 sentences, slow and true. Honor is not loud. It is legible. Forgiveness is not clearance. It walks on a schedule built with proof. I will keep the paper where sunlight can find it, the seeds where water can find them, and my name where I can read it back to myself and believe it. The cabin breathed. The fan hummed the hymn it knows in the cabinet. The ledger and the receipt and the timeline cozied up like an orchestra tuning to the same note. And outside, in the dark, a row of seeds thought about tomorrow without making promises they couldn't keep yet, a respectable habit I planned to copy. Monday did not ask for courage. It asked for pens that work. I took the metal case to the bank for the vault addendum, slid the certificate into the folder like a leaf pressed in a heavy book, and met Miss Chen in the viewing room where the air always votes for order. We logged the return, added Rowan's letter to the index, and filed a copy of the protective receipt under custody, active. We like nouns, Ms. Chen said. Stamping. They lift better than adjectives. The vault door side closed, a sound I am learning to trust. At the clerk's office, I accepted the victim notification packet Sheriff Ortiz warned me about. Its pros could indeed sand wood. I set it on the table next to the frog cookies I'd baked for Miss Lark, gratitude disguised as pastry, and read with a pencil. Dates to track. Forms to sign acknowledging I wish to be heard at sentencing. Boxes for restitution sought. A space for a victim impact statement, which is a fancy term for telling the room what the wrong thing did without turning grief into theater. Elder wisdom. Write the hard paragraph on a day when your voice is calm. Anger is a poor stenographer. It adds words you didn't say and forgets the ones that save you. I drafted 3 versions using small verbs. One about time, hours spent on phones, at counters, with photocopiers that require compliments to behave. One about dignity, the way a kitchen becomes a courthouse and still has to make soup on time. One about legacy, objects meant for stewardship briefly handled like inventory. I underlined exactly 1 sentence in each, then let the rest breathe. Trent from the insurer's SIU called with the cautious cheer of a man who has good news and paperwork to match. "We voided the fraudulent change," he said. "Your beneficiary status remains intact. We've referred the forgery to the U.S. attorney as a companion case." He emailed a letter that said the useful words rescinded, restored, recorded, plus a page of microdot analysis I printed for the binder, because one day Theo may enjoy learning that paper sometimes hides constellations. Academic phrase of the day, restitution schedule. The court's plan that translates a dollar figure into a calendar. How much? How often? Through which office? With which enforcement if someone forgets? Justice behaves better when it knows the due date. By noon. The U.S. Attorney's Office circulated a brief. Crisp and the impersonator charged with mail fraud, access device fraud, conspiracy, and attempted possession of stolen government property. The shop owner, Dallo, entered a cooperation agreement that included restitution and training requirements. He will attend a provenance seminar and implement a written intake policy. Consequences that teach. My favorite kind. I printed the docket entries. The cabinet door accepted them like hymns pasted neatly into a hymnal. Light joke number 1. I told Maribel our town should add Intro to Provenance 101 to Adult Ed, next to pottery and line dancing, syllabus, daylight, receipts, and why a handshake is not a filing system. She offered to guest lecture with her eyebrow. Cole arrived with a brown paper bag and a vocabulary that had spent the morning learning to be useful. He'd sold the extra car and opened the restitution account. He brought a deposit slip with the solemn pride of a kid showing his first report card. "This is not penance," I said gently. "It's furniture. The room we're building needs sturdy pieces." He nodded, and for once the nod felt like a full sentence. We walked to the porch to check the seed row. Theo's circles with freckles had become green commas, shouldering up through soil. We watered to 60, then 61 because the day tasted generous. Sarah came by with a deliberate slowness, as if speed had cost her too much this month. She carried a manila envelope and a sentence that wore its shoes properly. "I met with the investigators," she said. "I told the truth." She handed me a written apology addressed to me and to Theo in separate pages. The first, naming forgery, forwarding, and the cluster box stunt she had encouraged. The second, promising to keep paper boring and love visible. No but, no ribbon. I placed both in the binder under apologies, kept. Boundaries, accept apologies the way gardens accept rain. Grateful. But we still weed tomorrow. Sidebar. Odd fact. Water drips from a faucet form beads because of surface tension. Add a drop of soap and the tension breaks. The bead relaxes, and the drip changes shape. Apologies that name the soap, what broke the tension, keep the future from beating up into the same mistake. In the afternoon, a victim witness advocate called to explain where to sit, when to stand, and how to submit my statement without turning it into a closing argument. She suggested 2 minutes and 1 noun per breath. "The judge appreciates oxygen," she said. "So will you." I practiced aloud. Metronome set to kind. Then a call from Major Ellison. Dallow signed his restitution agreement. An initial check will accompany the formal return receipt. Crisp is in custody. The impersonator is negotiating. Your presence at sentencing is welcome but not required. Your statement will be read regardless. The metronome in his voice had shifted up a key, still steady. Now in a register that sounded like mattered. Light joke number 2. I asked if the courthouse had a boring excellence award for citizens who file properly. "We call that a clean docket," he said, very prestigious among clerks. We spent the evening drafting our family's smaller protocol. Holidays without ambushes. Birthdays without place cards that jab. Financial changes only after 2 nights of sleep and a notary. We wrote them on a single page with wide margins so the future could annotate. Cole read it aloud to Sarah. She added the line I hadn't thought to include. "If we forget, we will stop, apologize, and start over without defending the forgetting. A sentence like a gate you can actually open at dusk." Dr. Nadir sent a photo of his daughter holding a tomato the size of her palm. "For the man who made this possible," he wrote. "And the woman who keeps the file that keeps the story true." I put the picture on the fridge next to Theo's seed drawings. The fridge looked like a bulletin board for a conspiracy of ordinary goodness. The victim packet wanted dates. I gave it dates. It wanted dollar amounts. I listed postage, mileage, hours missed. A modest sum for a new mat that does not smolder at dawn. It asked how the crime affected my life. I wrote, "It taught my kitchen to hold 2 jobs and my voice to stand up straight without shouting. It took hours I cannot invoice. It returned a story my grandson can inherit." Then I stopped. Enough is a technique you have to practice. Academic phrase of the day. Bonus, because the binder got ambitious. Allocution. The right to speak to the court before sentencing. Not to argue law. To supply context, the spreadsheets can't. I underlined the word as if it were a newly learned herb I planned to use sparingly. Light joke number 3. I labeled a folder "Do Not Overdo" and put 1 chocolate inside as a bribe to my future self. The cabinet approved this balanced approach. Night showed up like a friend who knows not to knock. I set tomorrow's clothes where they could behave without supervision, slid my statement into a sleeve with the potato paperweight standing guard, and practiced breathing while walking from table to door to sink, sink to chair. The metal case stayed in the cabinet because today was about sentences, not shine, before sleep. I wrote my 3 truths for the wall inside my head. Justice is a calendar and a calculator and, if we are lucky, a classroom. Love is not an alibi, it is a reason to be exact. Boring is a blessing that tastes like paper and water and sleep in the dark. The cabinet's contents made their quiet music, stamps, receipts, logs, like an orchestra tuning to the same patient note. Out on the porch, the seeds kept an appointment with gravity and moisture. They had no control over and still trusted. Tomorrow I will stand when asked. Read what I wrote, and sit down without explaining the parts that don't belong to the room. And then I will come home, log the watering, and count to 60 with a boy who is learning that steady is a verb. Sentencing day smelled like copier heat and lemon cleaner, like a school that teaches consequences instead of algebra. I ironed a plain blouse because smooth fabric makes sentences stand straighter. Tucked my statement into a transparent sleeve, and slipped the protective receipt for the medal behind my ID. Proof living beside name. At the courthouse. Chairs remembered yesterday's headlines and tried not to talk about them. The clock on the back wall kept its metronome promise.
We sat where the advocate told us, second row, aisle. As if exits were a kind of oxygen. Dallo, the shop owner, looked like a man who had been introduced to humility and decided to keep the acquaintance. Sarah sat 2 benches back with hands folded the way students hold them when they've read the chapter twice. Cole took the seat beside me and breathed on purpose. Sheriff Ortiz gave a nod that felt like a safety pin.
Elder wisdom. Say the hard thing when your voice is calm and the room is bright. Anger is theatrical lighting. Daylight is how beams get inspected. The judge entered, not grand, exactly, but definitive. The U.S. attorney summarized mail fraud, access device fraud, conspiracy, attempted possession of stolen government property. She read dates like fence posts and showed her work. Dallo's cooperation agreement came first. Restitution, policy overhaul, training. He faced the room and said the important thing with only nouns and verbs. I didn't ask. I will ask. I will pay. The judge accepted the agreement like a signed truce between impulse and procedure. Academic phrase of the day. Allocution. The structured moment in which a defendant may speak before sentencing, and victims may address the court. Not a debate. A placing of weights on the right pans of the scale so judgment lands where gravity intended. Crisp stood. His suit looked expensive and tired. He spoke in a long sentence that forgot about breathing until halfway through. The judge waited him out, then returned to numbers, statutes, and calendars. The sentence: months that sounded like a season you don't want to repeat. Supervised release. And restitution split by schedule. The impersonator for the cluster box received her choreography too. Less time, more service. A requirement to attend a training that teaches which keys belong to which doors. My name was called. I stood the way the advocate had coached. 2 feet, soft knees, paper at a diplomatic distance. I read my 3 paragraphs and put periods where my lungs wished for commas. I said, "You took hours I cannot invoice. You turned my kitchen into a courthouse that still had to make soup. You treated heirlooms like inventory." I said, "The chain is restored, the story legible again. The garden watered by a boy who now knows how long 60 feels." I did not say, "I am angrier than tea can hold." That sentence belonged at my table, not here, when I finished. The courtroom felt a little wider, as if it had exhaled alongside me. Light joke number 1. As I sat, Cole whispered, 10 out of 10 diction, like a nervous sportscaster. I tapped his knee with a look that meant we are not that kind of broadcast. After the gavel's soft thunder, there were handshakes that behaved and doors that learned their manners. The victim witness advocate pressed 2 things into my hand: the formal restitution schedule and a card with a number that answers during lunch. The schedule translated money into months and made math into mercy. Dallo's first check issued today. Court-ordered payments from Crisp routed through an office that has seen every excuse and typed "declined" without flinching. Sidebar, odd fact. A check's magnetic ink character recognition line, MICR, uses iron oxide so machines can read it even when a stamp or pen crosses the numbers. Reliability lives in the tiny places. It comforts me that even ink can carry weight. Outside. Sun fell across the courthouse steps like a good habit. Dr. Nadir waited at the bottom with a paper bag of tomatoes and a smile that keeps bees calm. He had taken the morning off to sit in the back row quietly, and that felt like another kind of medal. "For your ledger," he said, handing me a tomato as red as authority. "For your table," I answered, and meant both. Back home. We parked the day where it could drain. Miss Chen at the bank stamped the vault addendum. Miss Lark frog-clipped my filed statement, Major Ellison emailed a simple line, chain intact, proceed to ordinary, which might be the most romantic sentence a bureaucracy can write. The cabinet door accepted the copies with the satisfied thud of a bookshelf meeting a new spine. We made a ceremony that didn't need an audience. On the porch, I set the metal case beside the certificate, both within reach of dusting and out of reach of worship. Cole read the restitution schedule aloud, the way you read a recipe you plan to keep. Sarah brought an apology for Theo in kid language, laminated accidentally by tears. He listened, then asked if frogs get time served. We ruled that frogs get time observed. He accepted the jurisprudence. The light joke number 2. I told the porch we were declaring a local holiday, Administrative Serenity Day. Traditions include labeling folders and eating cookies quietly. Evening softened the edge on everything. We checked the seed row. Green commas had grown into tiny quotation marks, each quoting a future melon. Theo watered to 66 on purpose, and we did not object because mischief belongs in units that don't ruin the system. The sprinkler heads winked like experienced bailiffs. At the kitchen table, I took the brass key from its dish and laid it next to the potato paperweight, 2 citizens of my small planet. For months, that key meant a question. Now it means a door I choose. I threaded it onto a cord and hung it on a hook inside the cabinet, reachable to hands that know what it opens for, invisible to hands that don't. We drafted our family's keys policy on one card. Who holds which? For what? By when? Keys to the vault, the co-op box, the shed with the wrenches. Keys to words. Please notarize. I decline to speculate. Count to 60. Keys to rooms. The annex, the clerk, the porch at dusk. Keys we no longer hand out. Panic, secrecy. The midnight urge to fix what only daylight can. Light joke number 3. Theo asked if the metal gets a key. It already has one, I said, tapping the receipt. The locksmith's name is Paper. He nodded like I'd given him a riddle with training wheels. We ate dinner that did not perform. Beans, bread, a tomato that tasted exactly like a rescue. After, Cole walked the ditch line with a flashlight, practicing being the person who checks the thing before it breaks. Sarah stacked plates in quiet stacks and didn't rearrange my cabinets, which is a kind of apology you can shelve. When the house yawned, I opened the ledger one last time and wrote a line in neat block letters, like Leon used to. Chain closed, water steady, keys assigned, story preserved. I slid the pen under the clip and let the room choose darkness on purpose. Tomorrow is smaller. Update the co-op with a photocopy that hops with frog green. Label a mason jar, fine for forgetting, and put grocery cash inside it. Teach Theo to say provenance until it leaves his mouth like a friend. Next month is bigger. Harvest. A picnic, an empty chair for what we lost, and a place card that just says our names without jokes. For tonight. The fan hums like a librarian who loves you. The cabinet holds its orchestra of paper, and the seeds make their private bargains with moisture and will. The porch does not smolder. The metal does not wander. The key does not weigh on me. It hangs where intention lives. We count to 60. We turn off the light, and we let uneventfulness be our loudest victory. Morning begins in a courthouse where sentences behave like beams, not thunder. A judge translates wrong acts into calendars and restitution. The shop owner accepts education and repayment, and the instigator learns the exact size of his season. The narrator's voice enters on purpose. 2 minutes. Small verbs. Steady breath. Naming hours stolen. Dignity leaned upon, and heirlooms restored to stewardship. Allocution becomes not a spotlight, but a beam of daylight. Paper does its honest lifting. By noon, the boring miracles line up, a restitution schedule that turns money into months, vault addenda stamped, A simple email, chain intact, proceed to ordinary, that reads like a blessing from the Department of Real Life. Gratitude arrives in usable shapes. A surgeon holding a tomato, a clerk offering frog green clips, a son with a deposit slip and a spine learning the grammar of apology. The medal returns to a shelf that neither worships nor forgets. A brass key, once an omen, becomes a tool hung inside a cabinet that knows the names of things. Seeds sprout like quotation marks, promising sentences worth waiting for. Family protocol settles into furniture you can sit on. No decisions after dark. All changes notarized. Birthdays without ambush. Provenance turns into a word children can say while watering. Paper turns into the locksmith's name. Humor remains in the room. Administrative Serenity Day. Frogs with time observed, because gentle laughter keeps hinges from rusting. And as dusk folds the porch, the story chooses uneventfulness on purpose. The systems hum, water at B flat, fans like librarians, and the ledger receives its final note. Chain closed, story preserved. Tomorrow's tasks shrink to labels and gratitude. A co-op update and a mason jar for forgetting. The victory isn't loud, it is legible. The keys are assigned, the garden keeps time, and sleep arrives like a receipt stamped received.